So I think you spend a lot of time deliberating over the priorities of council, but how do you respond to people that say that affordability is still a concern in Burlington?
Affordability, I think, is the number one issue facing all municipalities. Housing affordability, income's not keeping up. That is the next biggest issue on our horizon that we need to tackle. At the same time, we know that we have to take care of our community, we have to take care of our infrastructure, and we have to make sure that the resources that you've come to rely on don't fall into disrepair. And we have high expectations in our community, and we should. We are the #1 city in the country, yes. And a #1 city means we have community centers that meet the needs of our community. It means we have good roads to drive on. It means we have more trees. All of that requires an investment. And so, as I said in my remarks earlier, our staff do a line-by-line review every year and find about $1 million to cut from the budget or redirect. We did ask the province for funding to do a review, and we're looking to do that again this year. So I think when people look at where their dollars were invested this past year, it does reflect community priorities and things that we've heard. So we also do have a property tax rebate for our low-income folks if that is a challenge. I think the affordability question is a much larger conversation, and it's one that we need to be thoughtful and detailed about.
We've certainly heard some concerns from business owners, and this is really out of council's control, but certainly with rising property values, so too goes rising taxes. And especially I think that's more prevalent maybe in the downtown core than the rest of the city. But how do we address that as a community? Because obviously, you've spent a lot of time and energy trying to protect downtown. I think we all have a very strong desire to have a good downtown. But if people can't afford to operate businesses there, what's the answer to that?
Well, this is one of the key reasons why this council has been so serious about controlling overdevelopment pressures. That leads directly to land speculation, which leads directly to rising costs. And so when you have a property in the downtown that is slated for a 4 to 8 story building and 26 is approved, the next property beside it is not going to be priced in the market for 4 to 8 stories, it'll be priced at 26. The land speculation and escalation in our downtown, it's been the Wild West for as long as I've been on council, and we're now taking the steps we need to tamp that down, to say we have a plan, the plan is appropriate, and we're going to stick to it. And we're not going to see those wild fluctuations of land speculation. We also know that in the downtown, when a new building comes in and existing buildings are torn down, that creates an increase on price. We have businesses located in some older buildings in the downtown, and it's relatively cheaper to operate. And this is happening across the GTA, that when you have new, it costs more. So we have to protect and plan our development very carefully. We also have to make sure that when new developments come in, that an equal amount of business space is made available. And we've seen in some of the decisions previously, and why we're reviewing our official plan, that we've lost square footage of business space in the downtown. So we've lost affordability, we've lost square footage, we've got land speculation. We also know, and again, this is an issue that is across the GTA and in fact across the country, that housing is being used to park capital dollars. It's being bought by investors as a safe way to increase a return on investment. People aren't living there. We've had our own experience with Airbnbs here, and I have to thank Shauna Stolte for being all over that and bringing some licensing to our table to consider. But we want, when housing is built, ultimately, we want the people who buy it to live there. Mm-hmm. We want a community. We don't want empty units for investors or the flow through of of people just using it as a rental hotel, essentially. So these are issues across the country, and these are the kinds of things that I'm talking to other mayors, some of whom are in this room, about how do we address this from a policy standpoint. But again, we need to have a really thoughtful conversation around what is triggering all these things, and that's what we're going to do.
So the main tool you've used is the interim control bylaw. Has that gone as expected? Has it done what you wanted?
Absolutely. So we put a pause on development in downtown to consider what should be appropriate, to study what it means to have a major transit station area designation on what is essentially a ticket kiosk and a bus shelter. And the impact of that designation, as I said earlier, was a 26-story building approved on a 4 to 8-story parcel of land. And so we had to look at it, we had to address it. What does this mean? And we discovered that the province has not distinguished among MTSAs, and so our ticket kiosk and bus shelter has the same designation in legislation as Union Station and Pearson, with nowhere near the passenger counts. And so the study that we embarked on to say, what does this mean? How can we better define what an MTSA is downtown? The work of the consultant has really given us that, and essentially said, downtown isn't and never will be really a properly functioning MTSA, even with significant investment, which we'll continue to make because we're a transit-friendly council. But it will never have the kind of ridership and investment that we'll see at the 3 GO stations, where the province is investing millions and millions of dollars in 15-minute service. So we know that the major new population and employment growth is going to be around those 3 centers. The work that was done over the past year to identify that gap and to now fix it through policies, which we'll be talking about later today at Council, we will be better positioned to define what it means downtown, what it doesn't mean, so that we're not really a sitting duck at the tribunal to have somebody say, oh, it's called this, therefore, sure, the sky's the limit. That's completely inappropriate.
So you obviously have to work within the whole framework that the province has set out. But there are voices that say that perhaps we haven't gone far enough, that in fact, the height restrictions should be stricter, that downtown should be completely protected. How do you respond to those voices?
So my position has always been, and I think it's reflected in the community, that we're not stopping growth and development. It's about the right development of the right scale in the right place. And I think that's what we've done downtown. So just an example of what's changed in the policies we approved on Monday. The adopted official plan by the previous council foresaw a 17-story building in the middle of Village Square. Doesn't make any sense. It's a very unique area, 3 heritage buildings that are not designated, not protected under legislation. And so we said that may not be the best place for a 17-story building. However, when you look further up Brant Street to Ghent Avenue, where there's existing 19-story buildings in that area, we said that makes more sense for a high-rise to be there. And we also looked at, but we want to make sure there's transitions, that it's scaled back in height as it gets closer to a low-density established neighborhood. So we took a very thoughtful approach to where should height go, where shouldn't it go, how do we integrate and make sure that development respects what's in the area, how do we protect our heritage, how do we protect the public services that are here, how do we protect affordability? How do we protect our existing businesses and our existing rental stock, which is cheaper? We have social housing almost right across the street from here. We need to protect that. We have I call it a fine-grained ecosystem here in downtown Burlington, and if you just say it should all be high-rises, that completely upsets the balance that we currently have. And I also have heard from the community that their appetite for height is closer to the GO stations where it should be. So this conversation has always been about what goes where, how much of what goes where. It has never been about being anti-development, and that's just an oversimplified, I call it bumper sticker logic, that we've never been about that. It's about getting a community vision and controlling where it goes.
So you touched on the major transit station area designation, and that'll go to the region in April. You have, I think, a meeting right after this for more delegations. And then the next step is the province. Do you have a sense of how the work that you've done will be received, well, first at the region, and then also, do you have any indication what the province is thinking?
Well, we have kept the region, we work very closely with the planning department at the region, so our staff and of course they have come to our meetings. We've had the director of planning from the region sit in on some of our public meetings. We have a very close relationship, and they've been with us every step of the way to advise, to learn about what it is we're doing, so they're very well briefed. We have a representative for our local MPP's office here. Thank you for joining us, Ken. And we've kept our local MPP very, informed through the process. And so we have always, as a council, believed that your decisions should be informed by facts, by evidence, by data, and you look at the study that we did that informed the changes we're making to our official plan and informed the changes that we're making to the major transit station area policies in the official plan. That's the evidence. That's not me saying that. So when you look at the research that was done by independent consultants, you look at the data that they've brought forward, everything points to really what the community has always known, but nevertheless, when it makes sense, and that's where the growth should go. So that work is really going to position us well to have the next stage of conversation with both the region and the province about reviewing these designations downtown and whether they still make sense in light of the evidence.
I'm going to quote you to you. You've said that strengthening our official plan is one more milestone on the journey to reclaiming a community vision for downtown. And what do you mean by that?
So it's about a 5-step process. So hold on to your hats here. So getting the official plan, what we believe is what should go where should height go, where should single family go, where should businesses go. That's step number 1. And we did that on Monday night with new official plan policies that, or a concept rather, the policies will come back in April. The next step was, what do we do with this major transit station area designation that hit us in the face at an Ontario Municipal Board tribunal ruling? So we've done that work, and it really solidifies that the downtown isn't going to be an MTSA, but the GO stations are where that growth should be. That's step 2, and we are approving policies later today on that. Step 3 ultimately is to get rid of the local planning appeal tribunal. We need to just kick it to the curb. It was something that was started 100 years ago to manage rail lines through small towns across the country. It may have had some usefulness 100 years ago. Right now, it simply overrules council and community democratically elected council decisions. And so myself and one of the Halton mayors brought forward a resolution to Halton Regional Council to ask the province to get rid of the local planning appeal tribunal. We're the only province in the country that has a tribunal where you can overrule simply because you don't like the decision. Everywhere else, it's a much stricter set of tests, and you have to have not followed process, like you made the decision in secret. So that's step 3. We've passed that resolution and sent it along. Step 4 is we need a charter with the province to give us more powers to run our own shop. And there is a movement that started in Toronto, the Charter Cities movement. Toronto already has what's called a City of Toronto Act, where they get to make certain decisions that no other municipality in the province gets to make. Vancouver, Calgary, Edmonton, they all have charters with their province. So we need a City of Burlington Act that will give us powers really over land use planning and give us powers over governance, which is elections. And we saw what happened in the Toronto election, where if you don't have that power and a province chooses to cut your council in half in the middle of an election, they can do that. And where the charter piece comes in is if we ask the federal government for what's called a single province amendment, so we don't have to reopen the Constitution. We get an amendment saying, yes, we at the federal government agree with this agreement that the province and the city has come up with, And it solidifies it in the charter, so it makes it much harder for a new government to come in and overturn that. So at the end of the day, until we actually get control of land use planning back to the local level, democratically elected council, we're going to continue to have to fight to protect our community. But we're lining up all the pieces on the chessboard to do that, and we're in good shape. We're doing everything we can, and now we need other levels of government to give us a hand as well.
Your Worship, I have 45 questions left, and I just got my time cue. So I'm going to pull two.
Okay.
We need to go
I'll try to
through
be
them
fast.
rather quickly. You've made it very clear, Burlington's open for business. We're not anti-development. Is there any desire or any strategy around developing the QEW corridor?
Yeah, we actually have our Burlington economic development folks working on and talking to businesses. So part of our rollout the red carpet is, and I can't tell you who they are, but I have had 2 meetings in the last week of businesses looking to locate in Burlington, and I hope to have some good news soon or at my next State of the City.
What if we don't tell anybody? No?
The media's here somewhere.
And last, what's our strategy around smart city development? Have we thought about that? Because this seems to be a topic that's really, I think, confounding municipalities across the country because it's such an unknown world and there's so many things that are attached to that.
So it is something that we've been discussing at the city, and we have taken some steps. We offer, for example, free Wi-Fi in our city facilities. We certainly encourage everybody having access to Wi-Fi in our rural areas. So half of our community is rural, so the broadband movement, and we have Councillor Nissan who sits on the Federation of Canadian Municipalities. So we're working with other cities and mayors across the country at that level to see what we can do to advance that.
So, a bit of a tradition at the Mayor's State of the City. We have some rapid fire questions for you. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. What is your favorite genre of film?
Comedy.
What is your favorite genre of music?
I'm going to say rap right now, yeah.
What was the last film you saw?
Honey, what was the last film you saw? We were actually watching a documentary of World War I yesterday.
So I'm going to step outside this for a second. If you haven't seen 1917 from World War I and with your interest in veterans, highly recommend it. Who's your favorite actor?
Angelina Jolie.
What was the last book you read?
I'm actually reading Columbine. Little light reading before I go to bed. Right now, I don't read a lot of fiction. It, from Stephen King, was my last fiction book, I think.
We heard from your colleagues what their favorite memory of 2019 was. What was yours?
Actually, being able to see the community coming together at Mike Taylor's event at Burlasic Park and launching the Key to the City and just seeing the incredible pride. You know, we're quiet. Everybody in this room, I'm sure, has said, I love Burlington, and I hear that all the time, but we're quiet about it. And to see that outpouring of pride and support and love in the streets was amazing.
Tell me one Burlington hidden gem. There's so many.
All the people in this room who quietly do great things, and I have met so many, and there are so many I know that I've never met, and so I hope to have more stories to tell you next year.
That's a good answer. Favorite pastime?
Hiking with my dog and my husband, not in that order.
Who's your favorite counselor? Just kidding. What food?
I love them all equally.
What food could you not do without?
Anything potato.
What food could you absolutely do without?
Squid.
If you could get one company to be headquartered in Burlington, what would it be? You can say Cogeco, it's fine.
You're already here.
Oh, that's right.
I'm thinking, company. I'd like an entertainment company here in Burlington.
Sounds good.
I think that
That'd
would
be
be
great.
awesome.
What's the favorite part of your job?
The people, meeting the amazing people in Burlington and being able to tell the stories back to you, reflect back how awesome you are.
You've spent just over a year now. What's the one thing about your job that's surprised you?
The generosity and the kindness of the community, and that doesn't surprise me. But the fact that people take time out of their day to say thank you is something that I never expected. I expected negativity, I expected living in a fishbowl, but the fact that a woman would spend hours and hours and hours making a handcrafted panda picture because we gave her free transit, and that's not uncommon. I have lots of those stories, so it never ceases to amaze me how generous and kind people are and taking time to say thank you.
So we're here today in this beautiful facility. What is one act, if you could bring one act to this stage at the Burlington Performing Arts Centre, what would it be?
Wow. I think I'd like to see Sarah McLachlan again and not pay $400 a ticket for it.
What is the one thing that you hope we can all look forward to this year?
Tell me who you think should get a key to the city. Who do you think is doing amazing things in the community? Tell me about those stories because I want to tell them to the whole community.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much for listening and for staying. I appreciate it.